Hello everybody and welcome back to LMM. Today we're doing 9 things that you need to think about when starting a collection of vehicles. Numero uno, where are you going to put it? Storage is the most important part of all of this, because if you're going to have a collection of vehicles, you need somewhere for them to go. And preferably for your pride and joys and your projects, you want them stored under cover, keeping dry. And we're not all lucky enough to have a big driveway where we can have multiple cars. In fact, for me personally at home, I've only got on the street parking. And previously, when I've had 3 vehicles parked up there, little notes start appearing on the windscreens complaining that I'm taking up too much space. Distance is also a big factor. How far are you willing to travel to visit your collection? A friend of mine, he has to make a 2.5-hour round trip every time he wants to get to where his vehicles are stored. And frankly, that's just too far for me. That's too much of my day disappearing. The other thing you need to ask is, what do you actually want from your storage? Here at the shed, we're working on having our own maintenance area where we can service and look after our fleet of vehicles. One of my friends, the service that he's got set up is that they will clean and valet and have your cars outside ready for you when you turn up, which is a bit more than we have here. The most important thing out of all of this, though, is to make sure that you have somewhere safe and secure for your fleet to live, preferably somewhere that has someone there around the clock. The most important part of this is make sure that you're renting your space from somebody that you trust and that you have some kind of agreement that protects you, your fleet, and make sure that things can't be just removed at a moment's notice. The other thing to consider is, when can you actually access your storage? Is it just business hours or is it a little bit more loose? And if you want to do things like what we do, are there any kind of noise restrictions? We are so very lucky with the shed, and certainly without it, I wouldn't have been able to make this kind of collection of vehicles. And probably the channel wouldn't exist either. Point the second, cost. Now this rather follows on from the first point, but just how much is it going to cost you to acquire, maintain and store your collection of vehicles? Now obviously this is going to vary quite wildly on what it actually is that you want to collect. If you're going to have a collection of supercars down in London, that is going to be significantly more expensive than a collection of motorbikes somewhere in Wales. And obviously the costs rather grow depending on how many vehicles you have. Buying the vehicle is very much the easy part, but maintaining it, keeping it on the road, that's where the money comes in. And obviously more vehicles mean just more service items and more things to go wrong. It also depends massively on what you actually want out of your storage. If you're going to go for a top-notch facility where they valet and look after your vehicles for you, that's going to be a rather big difference between, say, an old barn on the back of a farmyard. The other thing to work out is what it is you're actually going to be paying for. Does your rent cover things like electricity, for example, or is that another overhead that you need to keep an eye on? Point number 3, having the right tools and equipment. Even if you look at what we do on the channel and go, nah, that's very much not for me, I'm going to have my fleet looked after by some nice people in a nice storage facility. There are 2 things that I really think you should look at having. Numero uno is a jump pack and numero dos is a compressor. Because it means if you turn up and your lovely vehicle has a flat battery and a flat tyre, you can at least get it fired up, that slow puncher inflated, so you can move the vehicle out of the way. Even better than that is to have a fleet of chargers like we now have in the shed. Every vehicle that will fire up under its own power has now a dedicated charger, meaning that the batteries will be kept charged and healthy, which saves us a fortune on having to fork out on new batteries. And it is frankly one of the best things that we have ever done. If you fancy maintaining and, dare I say, restoring your own fleet, then you're going to need to buy good quality tools. Buying cheap is a false economy, and it's a mistake that we've made in the past. Having tools which break, that round off bolts, or spontaneously fail in some other fun way is challenging. And it's something that we're now trying to move forward from and buy better quantity. At the moment, we're quite a fan of the Halfords Advance range because everything comes with a lifetime warranty. So if we break it, we can just take it in and get a replacement, and this is very good. Shopping around for second-hand items is also a very good idea. Both the compressors we have in the shed came second-hand. and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Of course, if you can afford to buy new, they do come with these fancy things called warranties, which is very much appreciated. Point 4. Accessing your collection. Now, this has multiple points, part of which I've kind of covered before under the you must understand when you can actually access your collection. However, it's a little bit more literal than that, of can you actually get your vehicle out? For instance, if I want to get the Supra out, I'm going to have to spend the best part of the day moving absolutely everything else out, firing it up, driving it outside, removing the Supra, and then putting all of this lot back. Which leads on to the next point. Getting the most out of our space is kind of like Tetris, and things have to slot together in a specific order, which is fine, but it does lead to issues that, say, if I want to put the MR2 into the shed and take the significantly smaller 106 out, things now don't go together like they once did, which means you're going to have to do more shuffling around to make everything fit. And there is one very easy solution to overcoming all of this, and it's to do not what I've done and don't buy enough vehicles that you absolutely use every square inch of your storage. That said, several people I know who have similar collections have the same problem. In order to get vehicle X out, I need to move vehicle A, B, C and D. Point number 5, and this is something that kind of only applies if you're a bit like me, but it's remarkably easy to forget where you left off. And obviously this only applies if you decide you want to maintain and work on your own collection. And I know it sounds really stupid, but it's very easy to forget where you were. Say that one week we've come up and we've been working on a project, and then next week you come up, something's broken on somebody else's vehicle, so we need to go fix that. The week after that, I'm away filming on something. The week after that, we come back and decide that actually another project desperately needs a service. And after that, a month, 2 months, 6 months gone past, you get back to the project you were working on and go, what was I actually trying to do on this? Where are the bolts that I had for it? And it's been so long since I touched it, I can't remember how it came apart, much less how it's meant to go back together again. Numero 6. This is a simple and a brief one. If you're going to be working on your own vehicles, don't work alone. At the very least, make sure there is somebody on site who's going to periodically check up on you. And by periodically, I mean quite regularly. Working on vehicles can be very dangerous and things can go wrong. Here at LMM, if we don't have another member of the team in the shed with us, we will go and find our landlord and make sure that every 10 minutes or quarter of an hour or so, he will either give us a phone or come up and make sure that we're okay. And if he's not about, we don't work. Point number 7. Are you going alone or are you part of a group? It's a pretty short one, this one, but if you're going to be part of a group with a collection of vehicles like this, it's essential to sit down before you start and work out where everybody stands. Are you all going to pay the same amount for rent? Will one person get more space than another? Things like this sound simple, but they're essential for avoiding conflict further down the road. Like, for instance, Lawrie, why is there no space for our vehicles in the shed? Number 8. Regular running. It's a well-known fact that machines do not like to sit idle, and internal combustion is no exception. If used regularly, things will just keep running. If stored for long periods, months or longer, things will start to fail. So it is crucially important to come to your collection and fire things up, and at the very least, get them up to operating temperature. Ideally, you want to get it out and give it a drive and just get everything moving about, but I appreciate that that's not always practical. Like half the cars here aren't actually on the road, but just getting them outside, driving them around for a bit does them the world of good. Which brings us nicely up to our final point. It will become your life. Having a collection of vehicles is wonderful. It is an exceedingly large amount of fun, but it is a colossal amount of work. There is always something that will need doing. There's always something that you will need to fix, something that will need money being thrown at it, and something that will take your time, before you even get to wanting to take your collection out to shows, for events, or just to drive and enjoy it. It is really good fun, and I would never not do it. I am so lucky to have these things and be able to show them off. But it is more work than anybody ever thinks it's going to be. And with that, that brings you to the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed 9 things to think about before starting a collection of vehicles. And if you have enjoyed it, how about clicking somewhere over there for some of our other videos that show off the series of looking after these and some of the adventures we have. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you've enjoyed it. Now to go and put all this back into the shed. Ta-ra.